You're the biggest disappointment I've ever had." The words hung in Dr. Craig Young's office like smoke from a house fire. Emily sat there in her perfect yoga pose. Even in a chair, she managed to look like she was demonstrating proper alignment, staring at me with those green eyes that used to make my heart skip. Now they just made my stomach turn. "Fair enough," I said. The therapist's pen paused mid-scribble. I could almost hear my marriage snapping like a dry twig underfoot. 15 years, 2 kids who were thankfully at college, and here we were. Emily Grafton, Zen master of passive aggression, had finally said what she'd been thinking for God knows how long. "That's it?" Emily's voice pitched higher. "That's all you have to say?" I looked at her sitting there in her $70 Lululemon top, her highlighted hair pulled back in that effortlessly messy bun that probably took 20 minutes to perfect. My wife, the yoga instructor who preached mindfulness and inner peace while systematically destroying mine. "What would you like me to say, Em? That you're wrong?" "We both know you're not." I leaned back in the overstuffed chair that probably cost more than my first car. "You married an advertising executive who thought he could make you happy. Turns out, I can't even sell myself to my own wife." Dr. Young cleared his throat. "Mark, how does it feel to hear Emily express her disappointment?" "Honestly, relieving." I watched Emily's face flush. "It's like finally hearing someone admit the sky is blue. I've been watching her check out of this marriage for 2 years. At least now we're being honest about it." Emily's Zen facade cracked. "I've been trying to save our marriage while I've been what? Working 60-hour weeks to pay for your studio? Coming home to find you've already eaten, already planned your evening, already decided I'm not part of it?" I kept my voice level, but inside, something cold and sharp was taking shape. "I've been trying to figure out what I did wrong. Turns out, I just existed." The session ended with Emily storming out and me sitting there, feeling lighter than I had in months. Dr. Young scheduled us for the following week. I nodded and smiled, knowing I wouldn't be back. That night, I packed a bag while Emily taught her evening class. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Be well, Emily, you win." I drove to the Hampton Inn by the highway and sat in the generic room, eating Chinese takeout and thinking. Emily wanted truth? She'd get it, but not the kind she was expecting. The next morning, I called my lawyer. By lunch, I'd changed all my passwords and moved half our money to a separate account. By dinner, I'd found Emily's second phone in her yoga bag. The texts with Jake went back 6 months. Photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see. Plans for a romantic weekend at the Ocean View Resort. My wife, the disappointment expert, had been getting her satisfaction elsewhere. I sat in my car outside her studio, scrolling through months of lies, and smiled for the first time in years. "You wanted truth in therapy, Em," I said to the empty car. "You'll get it. Served cold." Jake Fallon, real estate developer, divorced, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's houses. I knew him by reputation, one of those guys who showed up to town meetings with expensive suits and promises about revitalizing the waterfront. The kind of man who probably called Emily babe, and meant it. I hired Richie's cousin Danny to tail them. Danny was a private investigator who looked like he should be fixing motorcycles, but he had a gift for being invisible and a camera that could capture a pimple from 3 blocks away. The photos arrived by email 2 days later. Emily and Jake at the Ocean View Resort, sharing more than just dinner. Emily laughing, actually laughing, in ways I hadn't seen in years. Jake's hand on her thigh, Emily's head on his shoulder as they walked along the beach. I printed every single one. "You look like a man with a plan," Richie said when I showed up at work the next morning. Richie Martinez was my creative director and the only person in the office who'd tell me my ideas sucked to my face. He was also loyal as a golden retriever and twice as protective. "Emily's been getting private yoga lessons," I said, sliding the photos across his desk. Richie whistled low. "Jake Fallon? That pretentious piece of..." He caught himself. Sorry, man. What are you going to do? Research. I pulled up Jake's business profile on my laptop. Fallon Development has 3 projects going: the waterfront condos, the strip mall on Route 1, and that boutique hotel downtown. Want to bet he's been mixing business with pleasure? Nina, our office manager, appeared with coffee and her usual ability to know everything about everyone. Jake Fallon's been sniffing around the yoga studio for months, she said without preamble. My sister takes classes there. Says he shows up for the advanced sessions, always positions his mat behind Emily's. Anything else? His business partner, Tom Reeves, has been asking questions around town. Apparently Jake's been making financial decisions without consulting him. Big ones. I spent the rest of the week becoming an expert on Jake Fallon. His divorce had been messy. His ex-wife got the house, he got the debt. His development projects were leveraged to the hilt. And according to public records, he'd recently put a deposit on a waterfront condo in his own building. A condo that cost exactly the amount Emily and I had in our joint savings account. Friday night, I drove to the Driftwood, the local bar where half the town went to drink and the other half went to gossip. Tara, the bartender, had been serving beer and collecting secrets for 20 years. Mark Grafton, she said, sliding a beer across the bar. Haven't seen you in here since your bachelor party. Emily's been busy with her yoga empire. Thought I'd see how the other half lives. Tara leaned closer. Speaking of Emily, she's been in here a few times lately. Not alone. Really? Really. With that developer, Jake Fallon. They sit in the corner booth, all whispers and hand-holding. Last week, I heard him talking about some condo they were going to share. I took a long drink of beer. A condo, huh? Ocean View Complex. He was bragging about how they'd have the penthouse, how Emily deserved the best. Tara's expression darkened. No offense, Mark, but your wife's been acting like she's single. None taken. Apparently she is. The next morning, I called our bank and put a hold on all joint accounts pending the divorce proceedings. Then I drove to the Ocean View Complex construction site. The building was nearly finished, all glass and steel rising from what used to be a fishing pier. Jake's BMW was parked in front of the sales trailer. I could see him through the window, gesturing at blueprints while Emily nodded and smiled. They were planning their future with my money. I sat in my car and watched them for an hour, taking pictures with my phone. Emily looked happier than I'd seen her in years. Jake kept touching her arm, her shoulder, her hand. They were comfortable together, familiar. When they finally came out, Jake kissed her goodbye. Not a peck, but a real kiss, the kind that said they'd been doing this for a while. Emily got in her car and drove toward the studio. Jake stood there watching her go, grinning like he'd won the lottery. I waited until Emily was gone, then walked over to the trailer. Jake Fallon? I stuck out my hand. Mark Grafton, I think we need to talk. His face went white, but he shook my hand anyway. Mark, I didn't expect. I'll bet you didn't. I smiled my best client meeting smile. Beautiful building you've got here. I hear the penthouse is already sold. Look, Mark, I can explain. No need. Emily explained everything, in therapy. Very enlightening session. I looked up at the building, then back at him. Tell me, Jake, does your business partner know about your new investment strategy? Using other people's marriages to fund your projects? Jake's jaw tightened. I don't know what you think you know. I know my wife's been helping you make financial decisions with our joint savings account. I know you've been planning a cozy little love nest while I pay for her yoga studio and her lifestyle. I stepped closer. What I don't know is whether you're just stupid, or if you actually thought I'd never find out. Emily's leaving you anyway, Jake said, trying to sound tough. She's been unhappy for years. You're right. She has been unhappy. But you know what's going to make her really unhappy? Finding out that her knight in shining armor is about to lose everything he thinks he owns. I walked back to my car, leaving Jake standing there looking like he'd swallowed a fishhook. That afternoon, I made a few phone calls. By evening, Tom Reeves knew about Jake's unauthorized use of company resources. The bank knew about the suspicious deposit on the condo. And Emily's yoga studio mailing list had received an anonymous email with photos of their romantic getaway. My phone rang at midnight. "You bastard!" Emily's voice was shaking with rage. "How could you do this to me?" "Do what? Tell the truth? I thought you wanted honesty in our relationship. You're destroying my reputation. My students are canceling classes. Emily, you destroyed your reputation when you decided to screw around with a married woman's husband while spending your own husband's money on love nests. I'm just helping people understand the situation." "Jake isn't married." "No, but you are. Or were you planning to mention that little detail to your yoga students when you asked them to fund your affair?" The line went quiet for a long moment. When Emily spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "This isn't over, Mark." "You're right," I said. "It's not." I hung up and smiled in the dark. They wanted a fresh start? Perfect. It's always easier to start from the bottom. The Ocean View condo complex looked different at night. The construction lights cast long shadows across the unfinished units, and the sound of waves crashing below gave the whole place an ominous feel. Perfect for what I had planned. Richie had outdated himself. The paint bombs were rigged to motion sensors in the penthouse unit. The same unit Jake and Emily planned to christen as their love nest. The glitter cannons were positioned for maximum coverage, and the hidden speaker system? That was pure genius. "You sure about this?" Richie asked, testing the remote detonator one more time. "This is some serious payback territory. They stole $40,000 from our joint account for the deposit on this place," I said, adjusting the camera angle. "They've been planning this for months while Emily cried in therapy about how disappointed she was in our marriage. I'd say we're in justified territory." My phone buzzed. Danny, the PI. "They're on their way, ETA 10 minutes. I took my position in the parking garage across the street, camera ready, remote in hand. Richie was stationed at the back exit with a second camera. If Jake tried to run, and he would, we'd get it all on video. Jake's BMW pulled up at exactly 9:30. Emily got out first, wearing a little black dress I'd never seen before. Jake followed, carrying a bottle of champagne and what looked like overnight bags. They were giddy, holding hands, kissing in the elevator like teenagers. I waited until they'd been inside for 5 minutes. Long enough to get comfortable, to start believing they'd gotten away with it. Then I pressed the button. The explosion of color was visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Pink and purple paint splattered across the walls, the furniture, Jake and Emily. Glitter rained down like confetti from hell, and then my voice, amplified through the speaker system, filled the night air. "Welcome home, lovebirds. Hope you don't mind the housewarming gift. Consider it a wedding present from the husband you forgot to divorce." Emily's scream carried across the parking lot. Jake appeared at the window, paint-covered and furious, gesturing wildly. I zoomed in with the camera, getting every detail of their humiliation. Then I walked across the street and took the elevator up to the penthouse. The door was open. Jake and Emily stood in the middle of what looked like a rainbow had exploded, dripping paint and glitter, staring at me with expressions that ranged from shock to pure hatred. "Surprise," I said cheerfully. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I wanted to see how you decorated the place." "You son of a—" Jake started toward me, but slipped on the paint-slick floor and went down hard, landing in a puddle of purple. "Careful there, Jake. Wouldn't want you to get hurt. Emily's already got one disappointment in her life." Emily was shaking with rage, glitter in her hair, paint streaking her expensive dress. "You're insane. This is criminal vandalism." "Actually, it's performance art. See, I'm documenting the collapse of a marriage for my portfolio. Very avant-garde. I think it captures the essence of betrayal, don't you?" Jake struggled to his feet, paint dripping from his designer clothes. You think this is funny? You think this solves anything? I think it's hilarious. And no, it doesn't solve anything. But it's a hell of a start. I pulled out my phone and showed them the video I'd been live streaming to Facebook. 47 people watching so far. The comments are pretty entertaining. Tara from the Driftwood says hi, by the way. She always wondered how this would end. Jake lunged for me. I stepped aside, and he crashed into the paint-covered couch, sending up another shower of glitter. Jake, honey, I said, you might want to think about your next move. See, I've got about 6 months of evidence that you've been embezzling from your business to fund this little affair. Your partner Tom is very interested in seeing the financial records I've compiled. His face went white under the paint. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to bet your business license on it? Emily tried a different approach. Mark, please, we can work this out. We can go back to therapy, try to fix... Fix what, Em? You said I was your biggest disappointment. You found someone who wasn't. Problem solved. I looked around the ruined penthouse. Although it looks like your upgrade might need some work. Jake was backing toward the door, leaving paint footprints on the marble floor. This isn't over, Grafton. You're absolutely right. It's not. He ran. Actually ran, slipping and sliding down the hallway toward the emergency exit. I followed at a leisurely pace, phone camera recording, while Emily stumbled after us in her paint-soaked heels. The emergency exit led to the construction site behind the building. Jake was fast for a guy in his 40s, but paint-covered shoes don't have much traction on gravel. He made it about 50 yards before he went down again, this time into a pile of sand that had been delivered for the landscaping. Jake! Emily called out. Just go! Get out of here! But Jake was panicking now. Instead of heading for his car, he ran toward the water, probably thinking he could wash off the paint. What he found was the retention pond the construction crew had dug for runoff, 3 feet of muddy water and construction debris. He hesitated at the edge, looking back at me approaching with the camera. Go ahead, Jake, I called out. Take the plunge. I hear the water's lovely this time of year. He jumped. The splash was magnificent. Jake surfaced sputtering and cursing, covered in mud and pond scum, his expensive clothes ruined beyond repair. I got it all on video, including the part where he tried to climb out and slipped back in twice. Emily was crying now, mascara running down her paint-streaked cheeks. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? What I wanted was a wife who didn't cheat on me and steal my money to fund her affair. What I got was this. I gestured toward Jake, who was finally hauling himself out of the pond like some kind of swamp creature. But you know what? This is pretty good too. Richie appeared from behind the building, grinning and holding his camera. Got it all, boss. This is going to be legendary. Jake was limping toward his car, leaving a trail of mud and pond water. Emily followed, her designer dress ruined, her perfect hair hanging in paint-sticky strands. Emily, I called after her, you might want to find a new place to stay tonight. I changed the locks. She turned back, fury and desperation warring on her face. You can't do that. It's my house too. Actually, I can. It's called legal separation. You should look into it. I hear it's very popular among disappointed wives. They drove away in Jake's BMW, leaving a trail of paint and pond water on the leather seats. I stood there with Richie, watching the taillights disappear, feeling better than I had in years. So what's next? Richie asked. I looked at the ruined penthouse, the muddy pond, the construction site that would be buzzing with gossip by morning. Next? We let the whole town know what really happened here. Social media is a beautiful thing, Rich. By tomorrow, everyone in town will know exactly what kind of people Emily and Jake really are. And after that? I smiled. After that, we see how they like being the disappointments for a change. The video went viral locally within 12 hours. By Monday morning, half the town had seen Jake Fallon's impromptu swim and Emily's paint-splattered meltdown. The other half heard about it from the first half over coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. My phone had been ringing all morning. Reporters from the local paper, friends I hadn't heard from in years, even a producer from one of those daytime TV shows that thrived on relationship disasters. I ignored them all and focused on phase 2. Tom Reeves wants to meet with you, Nina announced, poking her head into my office. Something about Jake Fallon and missing company funds. Perfect. I'd been waiting for this call. Tom Reeves looked like a man who'd discovered his business partner had been using company money to fund his midlife crisis, which, according to the financial records Danny had helped me obtain, was exactly what had happened. "Mark, I owe you an apology," Tom said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I had no idea Jake was involved with your wife. If I'd known..." "You'd have what? Talked him out of it?" "Tom, Jake's been stealing from your company to impress Emily. The condo deposit, the romantic getaways, the expensive dinners, all of it came from Fallon development accounts." Tom's face darkened. "You have proof?" I slid a folder across the desk. "Bank records, credit card statements, receipts. Jake's been very thorough in documenting his affair. The man loves his paperwork." Tom flipped through the documents, his expression growing grimmer with each page. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jake's been busy. Did you know he took out a second mortgage on the Ocean View project without telling you? Used Emily's yoga studio as collateral somehow. Very creative financing." "That's impossible. Emily doesn't own..." Tom stopped, understanding dawning on his face. "He used your joint assets." "Bingo. My wife's been helping your partner steal from both of us." I leaned back in my chair. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Tom was already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer, and the bank, and probably the police." "Hold on," I said. "Before you do that, let me make a suggestion. Jake's going to try to pin this on Emily, claim she seduced him into it, that he was thinking with the wrong head. You and I both know that's garbage, but it might work with a jury." "What are you proposing?" "Give me 24 hours. Let me get Jake on record admitting what he did. Then you can destroy him legally." Tom studied my face. "This is personal for you." "Damn right it is, but it's also smart business. You want Jake out of your company with minimal damage to your reputation. I want him and Emily exposed for what they really are. We can help each other." That afternoon, I called Emily and suggested we meet to discuss the divorce terms civilly. She was staying at her friend Sienna's house, probably sleeping on a couch and wearing borrowed clothes since her wardrobe was still locked in our house. "Mark, please." Emily's voice was strained. "Can't we handle this through lawyers? After what you did Saturday night..." "What I did was throw you a housewarming party. I thought you'd appreciate the gesture." I kept my tone reasonable, almost friendly. "Look, Em, we both know this marriage is over. Let's just figure out how to divide things up without making it uglier than it has to be." "You want to meet? Fine, but somewhere public. I don't trust you anymore." "How about our house? You know, the one you used to live in. We can sit in the living room like civilized people and work this out." There was a long pause. "Will Jake be safe if he comes with me?" "Safe? Emily, I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just want to settle this mess and move on with my life." She agreed to meet Wednesday evening. I spent Tuesday setting up the recording equipment. Richie had outdone himself again. Tiny wireless microphones hidden in the living room furniture, cameras disguised as picture frames, even a backup recording system in case they found the obvious stuff. By Wednesday afternoon, our living room looked normal, but was wired better than a FBI surveillance operation. Emily arrived at 7 sharp, with Jake trailing behind her like a whipped dog. He was wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, probably borrowed from Sienna's boyfriend, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Thank you for agreeing to this," I said, gesturing for them to sit on the couch. The couch with 3 hidden microphones and 2 cameras pointed at it. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Wine? Paint remover?" Emily's jaw tightened, but she sat down. Jake remained standing, clearly uncomfortable. "Let's just get this over with," Emily said. What do you want, Mark? I want to understand. 15 years of marriage, and you throw it away for... I looked at Jake. This. Help me understand what I'm missing. You're missing everything, Emily said, her voice rising. You've been missing it for years. Jake pays attention to me. He listens when I talk. He makes me feel like I matter. And the money? The joint savings account you drained to pay for his condo? Did that make you feel like you mattered too? Jake finally spoke up. That was my idea. Emily didn't want to take the money, but I convinced her you owed her that much after years of neglecting her. Beautiful. He was already admitting to the theft. So you convinced my wife to steal from me to fund your real estate ventures. Very romantic, Jake. It wasn't stealing, Emily snapped. It was my money too. I had every right to spend it on another man without telling your husband. That's an interesting interpretation of marriage. Jake stepped forward. Look, Grafton, Emily's been miserable with you for years. You never appreciated what you had. I do. Is that why you've been embezzling from your business partner to impress her? Because you appreciate her so much? Jake's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Tom Reeves thinks you do. He's very interested in those company credit cards you've been using for your romantic getaways. Emily looked confused. Jake, what is he talking about? Nothing. He's just trying to cause trouble. I pulled out my phone and played a recording of my conversation with Tom. Jake's voice came through clearly. I used company funds for personal expenses. Emily's worth it. She deserves the best. You recorded me? Jake was backing toward the door. I record everything these days. It's amazing what people will admit when they think they're among friends. Emily was staring at Jake with growing horror. You stole money from your company? You told me you had savings. I was going to pay it back, Jake said desperately. Once the Ocean View project sold, I'd have plenty of money. With what? The building's been red-tagged by the city. Something about unpaid permits and safety violations. Funny how that happens when you're too busy playing house to handle business. That was a lie, but Jake didn't know that. His panic was beautiful to watch. You did this, Jake said, pointing at me. You sabotaged my project. I didn't have to sabotage anything. You did it yourself when you decided to steal from your partner and chase after another man's wife. Emily was crying now. Jake, tell me he's lying. Tell me you didn't steal money. I did it for us, Jake exploded. Everything I did was for us. You said you wanted out of this marriage. You said you wanted a new life. I was giving you that. By lying to me? By making me an accessory to theft? You knew where the money came from. You knew I was using company resources. Don't act innocent now. And there it was. The admission I needed, recorded in high-definition audio and video. Emily stood up, her face pale. I need to leave. I need to think. Where are you going to go? I asked mildly. Sienna's getting tired of house guests, and Jake's about to be arrested for embezzlement. Your options are getting pretty limited. Jake was at the door now, fumbling with the handle. This isn't over, Grafton. You think you've won, but this isn't over. You're right, I said. It's not over. It's just getting started. They left together, but I could hear them arguing in the driveway. By the time they reached Jake's car, Emily was screaming at him about lies and theft and ruining her life. I sat in my living room, surrounded by hidden cameras and microphones, and smiled. Tomorrow, Tom Reeves would get copies of everything. So would Emily's lawyer, the local newspaper, and anyone else who might be interested in the truth about Jake Fallon and Emily Grafton. Phase 3 was about to begin. The annual Founders' Day festival was perfect. Half the town would be there, including everyone who'd been following the Emily and Jake drama with the enthusiasm of spectators at a gladiator match. The local AV setup was handled by Danny's cousin Mike, who owed me a favor and had access to the sound system. You sure about this? Richie asked for the 10th time as we tested the wireless microphone hidden in my jacket. This is pretty nuclear, even for you. They made it nuclear when they decided to frame me for domestic abuse, I said, adjusting the mic. Did you hear the recording from last night? We'd bugged Sienna's house. Completely illegal, but Danny had connections and Emily had made a lot of enemies lately. The recording was crystal clear. Emily and Jake planning to claim I'd been physically abusive throughout our marriage, that the paint bomb incident was just the latest escalation in a pattern of violence. If he snaps and actually hits one of us, Emily's voice had said, we'll get everything. The house, the business, maybe even a restraining order that keeps him away permanently. Jake's response was even better. I know people who can make sure he snaps. A little provocation at the right moment, maybe some witnesses around. They were planning to set me up, to destroy what was left of my reputation and take everything I'd worked for. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic kind of way. It was also going to backfire spectacularly. The festival was in full swing by noon. The town green was packed with families, food trucks, and the usual collection of local politicians glad-handing their way toward re-election. I positioned myself near the bandstand, where the sound system would give me maximum coverage. Emily and Jake arrived around 2, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Emily wore sunglasses and kept her head down, but people were still pointing and whispering. Jake stayed close to her, playing the protective boyfriend role for all it was worth. Sienna and Harper flanked them like bodyguards, shooting dirty looks at anyone who stared too long. The yoga studio crew rallying around their fallen instructor. It would have been touching if it wasn't so pathetic. I waited until they were near the center of the crowd, then activated the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice boomed across the festival grounds. I'd like to take a moment to share something with all of you. Many of you have heard rumors about my recent separation from my wife Emily. Today, I want you to hear the truth. The crowd turned toward me. Emily's face went white. Jake started pushing through the crowd, trying to reach me, but there were too many people in the way. Last night, my wife and her boyfriend, Jake Fallon, were recorded discussing their plan to frame me for domestic violence. They thought if they could provoke me into losing my temper in public, they could take everything I own. I pressed play on my phone. Emily and Jake's voices filled the air, crystal clear through the festival sound system. If he snaps and actually hits one of us, we'll get everything. I know people who can make sure he snaps. The crowd's murmur turned into an angry buzz. Jake had made it halfway to the bandstand, but people were blocking his path now, not accidentally, but deliberately. That's not all, I continued. Jake Fallon has been embezzling from his business to fund his affair with my wife. He's stolen over $200,000 from his partner, Tom Reeves, who is here today and can verify every word. Tom stepped forward from the crowd, holding a folder full of financial records. It's all true, he called out. Jake Fallon is a thief and a liar. Emily was crying now, her sunglasses off, mascara running down her cheeks. Sienna and Harper were trying to pull her away, but the crowd had surrounded them. My wife called me her biggest disappointment, I said into the microphone. She was right. I was disappointed in myself for not seeing what she really was sooner. Jake finally broke free from the crowd and charged toward the bandstand. You snake! He screamed. I'll ruin you! Perfect. I stepped aside as he lunged for me, and Jake crashed into the microphone stand, sending feedback screeching across the festival. He scrambled to his feet, face red with rage, fists clenched. Come on, he shouted. You want to fight? Let's fight. I held up my hands peacefully. I don't want to fight anyone, Jake. I just want people to know the truth about you and my wife. The truth? You want the truth? Jake was screaming now, spittle flying from his mouth. Your wife came to me. She begged me to save her from you. She said you were a pathetic loser who couldn't satisfy her. The crowd was getting uglier. Someone shouted, Homewrecker! Someone else threw a half-eaten funnel cake that splattered across Jake's shirt. That's enough! Emily pushed through the crowd, her face streaked with tears and fury. Stop it! All of you, just stop it! She climbed onto the bandstand, grabbing the microphone from my hands. You want to know the truth? Fine. Mark is right. I cheated on him. I took his money. I helped Jake steal from his company. Are you happy now?" The crowd went silent. Emily was shaking, her voice breaking as she continued. "I did it because I was miserable, because I felt trapped and ignored and taken for granted. Jake made me feel alive again, made me feel like I mattered. So yes, I destroyed my marriage for him. And you know what? I'd do it again." She threw the microphone down and jumped off the bandstand, pushing through the stunned crowd toward the parking lot. Jake followed, but not before someone in the crowd threw a cup of beer that caught him square in the face. The festival erupted in chaos. People were shouting, pointing, taking pictures and videos with their phones. The local newspaper photographer was having the time of his life, capturing every moment of Emily and Jake's public humiliation. I stood on the bandstand, watching my wife and her lover flee through a crowd that was chanting, "Homewrecker, thief," and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Victory. But this was just the opening act. The real show was about to begin. That evening, I threw a party at the Driftwood, not a celebration. I was too classy for that. Just a gathering of friends who wanted to support me through my difficult time. The bar was packed. Half the town showed up, including people I barely knew who just wanted to be part of the story. Tara was pouring drinks as fast as she could make them, and the atmosphere was electric. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out when I walked in. I climbed onto a chair, raising my beer. "Thank you all for being here tonight. It means more than you know to have the support of good people during a challenging time." The crowd cheered. Someone in the back shouted, "You're better off without her." "You know," I continued, "my wife told me I was her biggest disappointment. For a while, I believed her. I thought maybe I really had failed as a husband, that I deserved what happened to me." The bar went quiet, everyone listening. But then I realized something. The only disappointment here was my failure to see what Emily and Jake really were. Liars, thieves, people who would destroy a 15-year marriage and steal from their friends without a second thought. More cheers, louder this time. "So here's to disappointments." I raised my beer higher. "May we all learn to recognize them before they cost us too much." The toast was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass. Jake Fallon stood in the doorway, his face red, his clothes torn. Behind him, Emily looked like she'd been through a war zone. "You think this is over?" Jake screamed, pushing into the crowded bar. "You think you've won?" The bar went silent. Everyone turned to watch as Jake stumbled toward me, clearly drunk and definitely dangerous. "I lost everything because of you," Jake continued. "My business, my reputation, my future. All because you couldn't handle losing your wife to a better man." I stepped down from the chair, keeping my voice calm. "Jake, you lost everything because you're a thief and a liar. I just made sure people knew about it. You destroyed my life." "No, Jake. You destroyed your own life when you decided to steal from your partner and break up my marriage. I just documented the process." Jake swung at me. I ducked, and his fist connected with the wall behind me. He howled in pain, clutching his hand. "That's assault," someone called out. "Someone call the cops." "No," I said. "No cops. Jake's had a rough day. Haven't you, Jake?" Jake was crying now, tears mixing with the red liquid on his face. "You don't understand. I loved her. I really loved her." "I'm sure you did, right up until you realized she was going to cost you everything you owned." Emily stepped forward, her face a mask of rage and desperation. "Mark, please, enough. You've humiliated us enough." "Have I? Because I seem to remember you planning to frame me for domestic violence. That seems like it deserved a little humiliation in return." "We never would have gone through with it." "Really? Because the recording suggests otherwise." I pulled out my phone and played the audio again. Emily's voice filled the bar. "If he snaps and actually hits one of us, we'll get everything." The crowd's murmur turned ugly again. Someone shouted, "Get out!" Others joined in. "Leave! Nobody wants you here!" Emily was backing toward the door, pulling Jake with her. "This isn't over, Mark. You think you've won, but this isn't over." "You're right," I said, following them to the door. "It's not over. It's just getting started. See, I've been thinking about what you said in therapy, about me being your biggest disappointment." I stepped closer, my voice dropping so only she could hear. "I realized you were wrong, Em. You're not disappointed in me. You're disappointed in yourself, because deep down, you know you threw away the best thing you ever had for a cheap thrill with a con man who stole money to impress you." Emily's face crumpled. "I hate you." "I know. But here's the thing. I don't care anymore. You wanted to know what a real disappointment looks like? Look in the mirror." Jake tried to take another swing at me, but he was too drunk and hurt to connect. He stumbled, fell against Emily, and they both went down in a heap on the sidewalk outside the bar. The crowd pressed against the windows, watching as Emily and Jake untangled themselves and limped toward his damaged BMW. Someone had keyed "thief" into the paint on both sides. They drove away, leaving rubber and dignity on the asphalt. I turned back to the crowd in the bar, all of them watching me with expressions ranging from admiration to awe. "Now," I said, raising my beer again, "where were we?" The party lasted until 3 in the morning. By the time it was over, everyone in town knew exactly what had happened between Emily, Jake, and me. More importantly, they knew who the real villains were. I walked home alone, past the empty house that used to be ours, past the yoga studio that would probably be closed by the end of the week, past the construction site where Jake's dreams had literally gone up in paint and glitter. Tomorrow, Emily would file for divorce. Jake would probably be arrested for embezzlement. Their reputations would never recover. Their futures would be built on the wreckage of their own choices. And me? I'd go back to work, rebuild my life, and never again let anyone call me their biggest disappointment. I paused at my front door and looked back at the town where I'd lived for 20 years. A town that now knew exactly who Mark Grafton really was. Not a disappointment, not a victim. The man who bit back when the underdog finally had enough. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and smiled. Session adjourned.